Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, in honor of the open mic reading space that existed from Half Price Books, titled Community Poetry, that was closed down. Hey, pictures of us. It was closed down due to the pandemic. I am reading during the 1 to 3 p.m. time period for the usual feature reading space, poetry from recent Scarce Publications books. I hope you appreciate them. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I am going to read for you guys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe poems in this last reading, all from the Down in the Dirt issue collection book from January to April 2023 that is titled Forbidden Library. Book titles are based on accepted writing was in the book. There is a piece that is called Forbidden Library, so I thought I would take Greek ruins that I photographed a number of years ago and put it in with these curled up pages and stacks of literal library books that used to be in a library and are now in my library itself. So this book, Down in the Dirt, Forbidden Library, has a number of poems and short stories in it, and I am going to share poetry for you guys in this last reading in honor of the community poetry reading space that was started by Tom Woodruff that had to shut down due to pandemic. I would like to thank everybody that is watching on the live feed. You guys are double plus awesome. But I was going to share with you, I'm going to first find from this book a poem that is written because somebody wrote, or published because somebody sent me a short story about element names. So in honor of that, I would put in a poem about a periodic table element since I wrote them. This poem, this first poem I'm going to read, not only appears in this Down in the Dirt book Forbidden Library, which was just released, but it is also element number 8 and appears in the periodic table of poetry. And this poem is a fun one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And it is for the element for number 8, O, oxygen, and it's titled, okay, it's all about the oxygen. Okay, so I like to think of myself as a history buff. And no, I don't pay attention to American history or even details like the ancient Roman Empire or anything. For the most part, I'm not even interested in the history of people. To quote Linus in Peanuts, I love mankind. It's people I can't stand. Yeah, I know my history is older than the human race, like how the whole solar system formed. For the Earth, even. I mean, how was this planet able to sustain life so that we humans could just sit around thinking about this stuff? As I said, when I think history, all I can do is gather evidence and theorize. But really, that just shows that there are times when I'm actually transfixed on truly more universal puzzles. So look, I know that I've studied way back to when matter didn't even exist yet in this universe, or how matter formed, or I know theories about asteroids bringing the building blocks of life itself to this planet. And sure, scientists think comets brought water to planet Earth too. But when I think of early Earth, when it formed, it was a real mess. There were constant bombardments with objects from outer space. Volcanoes were going off constantly, and the atmosphere was all sulfur and methane, thanks to the volatility of Earth's Mach 1. And okay, comets may have brought water to a planet that has oxygen in it, but really, back then, the atmosphere was a bunch of non-breathable stuff to us humans. Okay. So because there was no oxygen in the atmosphere, any life that started on Earth Mach 1 probably thought oxygen was poisonous. Because, okay, I know there's nitrogen in our atmosphere, but if there was no oxygen and it was replaced by sulfur, we couldn't live. But early life living on sulfur-rich environments may find oxygen is toxic to them, right? Okay, so I knew the universal historian inside of me wanted to know how oxygen actually got into our air, so human life, or any life as we know it here on Earth, could actually begin. Okay, so paleontologists study fossils, and we found some that are 200 million years old, like in Earth Mach 1. Think about it. This was cyanobacteria from 200 million years ago, near what scientists now call the Great Oxygen Event, which is what they call the biologically induced appearance of oxygen in the air. Well, anyway, if in Earth Mach 1, any oxygen that existed was just dissolved by the molten iron, that same iron that formed the Earth's inner core, I imagine. But the thing is, this cyanobacteria use photosynthesis, making oxygen. And once there was so much oxygen, it couldn't possibly dissolve into that saturated reserves any longer. All that oxygen stayed in our atmosphere instead. I don't know. I keep trying to piece together this puzzle, but this whole universe puzzle is a pretty massive endeavor. I mean, okay, all matter that we can monitor only takes up maybe 4% of this universe, and I still don't know how to fit the idea of dark matter into this puzzle. I've been working on it, so maybe I'll have to reassess learning everything about everything right now and work with stuff like the oxygen around me instead. There was your periodic table poetry fix, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. And back in the day when I would do element poems, I would make little images. That used to be my webpage image, and I would have the thing where, okay, it's all about the oxygen, and that would be my image. And that appears in the book, but I figured I'd give you a color version instead. But what I thought I'd share with you now are maybe 4 poems from part 2. They appear inside this book as well. But not only are they in the Down in the Dirt issue collection book Forbidden History, Forbidden Library, rather, because it's got library books stacked in there. But it also appears in section 2 of the CyberWit.net book titled Testament. Section 1 is all post-Roe v. Wade poetry. Section 3 is poetry reflective of the first book of the Old Testament, Genesis. And the last section is 4 poems about the last book in the New Testament, Revelation. But section 2 is about a very touchy subject in dealing with loss and the concept of suicide and struggling through pain, which makes this really quite a well-rounded book. And there happen to be 4 poems in both of these books that I'd like to be able to share with you. These, I believe, are pieces, all 4 of them, about the struggles and the eventual assisted suicide of a very well-known poet that I knew from Nashville area, C. Ramcourt. And these are the poems for him. This first one is titled Expression for Loss. This is supposed to be about, I don't know what this is supposed to be about when I'm at a loss for words. This is supposed to be about all of the pain that we have felt for far too many years, not being able to do a thing about it. So the poet crafts something pithy, thinking it makes a difference. And it does to some. But in the long run, what difference does it make? Working arduously, we craft these words, we struggle, and we create these words. We treat these poems like they are our children. Words. But words, at moments like these, they don't make a goddamn difference. This is supposed to be about how a poet understands. And this is supposed to be about how a poet puts all the pieces together with just the right words. Then why, at times like these, do words not make a goddamn difference? For what happens when the poet, the tailors of all that is good and true, decide they can't take it anymore? then what is the point of words? Good times. Sorry about that, you guys. This next one, from Down in the Dirt, is titled Only Souls Who Have Tried. The only souls I know who have tried or succeeded in ending their lives were soldiers or poets. They were trained by the US military to kill, or they were trained by no one to create. That crafting, that creating, that was you. And, oh, it breaks my heart. That ending breaks my heart. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that was two shorter pieces from the, it's terrible to say the suicide section of this book, but they're also the end of section 1 of Forbidden Library from Down in the Dirt magazine. But I'm going to have two longer ones. They will deal more about with the poet, the person living and having to fight. And first one will be fun storytelling, although it's a longer one. It is a dreams poem. Those were the days of our lives, dreams 8/12/22. I woke up from a dream, pre-dawn. Someone was talking to me, and I told them to stop, that I wanted to hear the words in the beginning of this song. This song had an instrumental at the start, but the singer sang something quietly. You had to strain to hear it. Then I listened for a moment, and then sang along. You had to let me go to the foreign shores. I have to now go to the nevermore. And then I woke up. For a half hour, I was trying to figure out what that song was. Was it by the Smiths, or was it a song by George Michael? Because I was sure the song, which I have never heard before, had to be about going to war. Later, it occurred to me the song was about your wanting to die. And I dreamed this right before your birthday. Just before I drive 2 days to say my final farewell. I keep thinking back to seeing my sun god. Like when I brought my husband to meet you for the first time, driving 8 hours to your Halloween party. From the show Dark Angel, I was Max, Jessica Alba, complete with a barcode on my neck. And my husband was Logan, who was in a wheelchair after being shot from saving a woman. I rang the doorbell to your first floor apartment with a 1-inch lip to get in. And when you opened the door, you were so concerned about getting him into your place in the wheelchair. So Logan stood up, said, "Oh, don't worry about it. This is just my costume." Did my sun god really think that I wouldn't tell him my husband was in a wheelchair, or that he was wheelchair bound? And if he was my sun god, shouldn't he have known already? Either way, the wheelchair was a fascinating icebreaker and my husband never had to worry about having a seat at the apartment Halloween party. Or when you flew to visit me, I picked you up at O'Hare Airport, and I wanted to take you to some great pizza place near North Chicago, a silo. And yeah, it had a huge silo in front, so even though I had no GPS and didn't know the address or the technical town it was in, I found it. I know you like your Southern charm, but I hoped you liked the change of pace. Or when you had your party on my husband's birthday. He was 40. So we took the 8-hour drive and brought along a few 40-ounce bottles of St. Ides beer because, you know, he was turning 40, and so he kept calling it St. Des. It was a riot, and hey, a ritual's a ritual. Or when you visit my house, trying to figure out what to do, so I say, hey, have you ever seen the movie Dead Man? You said, I think so, but it wasn't really good. But I was like, wait a minute. Johnny Depp does a great job in this black and white movie. It's like a Twin Peaks Black Lodge session. Iggy Pop's even in this. And so I was bold enough to force you to watch it for the new perspective. And it was great watching it with you. Johnny Depp was Bill Blake, shot after sleeping with someone's wife, then ran into a Native American who learned his name. You are William Blake? You are a great poet. So this Native American, who went by the name of Nobody, Xavier, taught him how to shoot a gun to protect himself before he died from his gunshot wounds. Blake was hunted down. One man asked, "Are you William Blake?" To which he responded, "Yes. Do you like my poetry?" And then shot him dead. We seem to walk that line of life and death and poetry, don't we? Wait. I almost forgot. I think this was when I came to visit you for a Tag Team Poets reading, and you talked about having pot, which this was before it was legal in the United States. So one poet friend there said, sure, let's go into the garage and have some. So I walked in there thinking that would be able to smoke some, and he pulled out a bong. So, okay, I guess I'll try it. And I held my breath, and then I started coughing, and then the poet started laughing and took a hit and started coughing too. And I wondered if he just coughed to make me feel less apprehensive. But when I walked out to the party, my husband must have seen my glassy eyes all over and saw that all of my apprehension was gone. Those were the days, weren't they? When you did things you wouldn't normally do, but you didn't regret a thing. You're better for every experience, big or small. Every adventure with my sun god shaped me for what I am today. And yeah, it was all worth it. Every minute. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one more. This one's the tough one. This is the one that I actually read at his services. And it's called Tag Team Poets. They say a person goes through 5 stages of grief after the loss of a loved one. But losing a god is not the same thing. So I'm not sure how much longer I'm stuck in this anger stage. I've fought through my entire life. You think I'm kidding, but I've fought sexism and rape from firsthand experience. Because I've wrestled through evil in the world, I feel that I can handle just about anything. It may tear me apart, but that's what we fighters do. We fight. We win. So after meeting my sun god up close and in person, and then after nearly losing my life, literally, that's when my sun god, the one who's supposed to give us light, said, well, I think he gave up on telling me his struggles, and instead knew what I wrestled through, and offered me a matching wrestling belt. I doubt it matched the luscious Leslie Love belt that he wore in his wrestling days, but you don't question these things when a sun god hands you a wrestling belt and says he knows your pain. But back in the day, before I discovered that he was a god, he came to me as a poet. And that's the important part. Because when this sun god gave me this wrestling belt, he very specifically said that we are now tag team poets, taking turns, sharing our pain, then letting the other come in to carry the load so we don't feel like we have to battle the world alone. Because, you know, I've never worn that belt before. That would seem sacrilegious. But now I think I have to wear this belt. Or I have to keep it, leave it, maybe behind my desk, where I'm always working, looking for inspiration. I'm not a religious person. I've always relied on my mind because we poets don't have much else. But what I can tell you is that we can all be tired of our heart breaking with the pain and anger after loss. And as I said, I still don't know how long I'll be stuck in this anger phase. But anger is one of those things that's supposed to make us right, to make us poets thrive, to help us make sense of our world, make sense of the world. But the survival instinct in each and every one of us, even us poets, and even, I thought, for the gods, is supposed to make you fight against the odds, against all odds. So I have to wonder, not knowing what a god goes through, what kind of pain a sun god must suffer through to decide when enough is enough. So maybe this is me bargaining the stage after anger, or try, like Bill Clinton, to feel his pain, to be too depressed to make a difference before I accept my loss of my sun god. I suppose I can rationalize this all away, at least superficially. But as I said, us poets seem to thrive on that anger. So maybe, as cruel as it sounds, maybe we always have to remain just a little angry. Because life is always just a little unfair. But oddly enough, it's just one painful way to remind us that we're still alive. Curtis Raymond, See Round the Court. I actually did wear that wrestling belt to read that at his services in Nashville. And then I put it behind my desk. Anywho, that was your installment of heart-gripping personal poetry, which would be the final reading because it's approaching 3 o'clock, in honor of the community poetry reading space hosted by Tom Woodruff, the Between Worlds poet from Australia who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. He ran this the first Wednesday of every month from 1 to 3 p.m. and after pandemic closed it down, he appreciated that I keep this alive. So I hope you enjoyed this reading. This was from the Down the Dirt issue collection book, Forbidden Library. Yes, there are Greek columns there from Agrigento in Sicily, Italy, stacked with a bunch of library books. If you look really closely, you can see all the library tags on the books. They're sitting in my library because they were given to me a while ago. So I figured that's a forbidden library for you. I hope you enjoyed that reading from That Scars Publications book. If you'd like to submit any writing to Down in the Dirt or CC&D Magazine, you can go to scars.tv and find links to submitting writing to either magazine. Thank you very much for listening. Also, if you wanted to check out Testament, this is a book from CyberWit Press. You can find it through JanetKuypers.com or look for Testament, Janet Kuypers, on Amazon, I suppose. It's their book. I don't sell it for them. But anywho, I thank everyone for listening. I hope that everybody who has had the opportunity to be vaccinated has been vaccinated. I hope that everyone remains safe. And most importantly, I hope everyone remains creatively inclined. Thank you all so very much for listening. Thank you all for listening on the live feed. As I had said before, you're double plus awesome. Thank you. And stay safe, and I will talk to each and every one of you very, very soon. Thank you all so very much. Thank you. Thanks.